Hello and welcome. President Bush, President Clinton, and many other leading figures from politics, business, and the arts have one thing in common. They were educated at the prestigious Yale University. It's one of the oldest and most influential educational institutions in America, with former students spread out across the world in positions of significant power. Considering where they end up and the influence they wield, are students of American universities being prepared well enough for dealing with a more globalized international world? Today we discuss the challenges facing American higher education with a long-time educator and administrator. Professor Richard Levin has been president of Yale University since 1993 and has undertaken major initiatives to internationalize the school's programs. And don't forget, we take your calls on the show and you can reach us at the numbers at the bottom of your screen. Professor Levin is joining us now from Yale University in New Haven. It's good to have you with us, sir.
Good to be here.
Well, Professor, considering the education, as I mentioned, that Yale provides, puts these powerful and influential people around the world, when you look at how they're being prepared for the sort of globalized and international world, is the education enough? Is it global enough in its content, or is American education still too insular?
Well, about 7 years ago, at the turn of the millennium, I really committed to the idea that Yale students needed to be better prepared for their role in an increasingly interdependent world. And over these years, we have dramatically enhanced the international content of our curriculum, and we've also set an objective for ourselves of getting every single undergraduate student an overseas experience during their 4 years of study. And that we're moving along. We're just about at our target now, and it's been very exciting for our students to get a broader exposure to living in the rest of the world.
Of course, so that's that's a sort of initiative that you've undertaken. When you look at American education as a whole, where does the blame lie for it not really being broad enough in its perspectives on the world?
Well, frankly, I think the blame lies in American society and American history. We are a country traditionally separated by two oceans from much of the rest of the world. And if you look at the whole history of American international relations, we kind of have vacillated between times of isolation, when we've tried to shut the rest of the world out, and occasional times of kind of moral crusading for American ideals in the rest of the world, such as in the Second World War. So that, and there are streams in American history of that sort. But what we're not used to is being a country that engages the rest of the world and really makes an effort to understand the rest of the world as a way of building interdependent lives together.
And yet American education, so I was going to say American education is so craved around the world, so obviously it does have some strengths, there's some appeal to it. Where would you see the strong points?
Oh, there's great appeal. I mean, the strong points are, first of all, the excellence of our faculties. Our research operation in this country is, I think, indisputably the strongest on earth. We've had a very fortuitous system of public funding for science that has made our scientific research extremely strong. It's also true that our methods of pedagogy, questioning, skeptical, open-minded, focused on developing critical thinking skills, has also been extremely successful. So we tend to attract the best students from around the world. I would say the U.S. and the U.K. tend to get the strongest international students.
How much has that profile of international students changed over the years? Because I know there was a decline in the number of international students at Yale, for example, between 2001 and 2005. Then, of course, in 2006 it leveled out and it started to increase again. Was that basically a result of September the 11th and the attacks of 9/11?
Yeah, I think there was an initial problem with getting visas in the summer of 2003. We had a lot of difficulties in this country with delays, and that tended to discourage people from other countries. So that's been much rectified. By 2004 it was fixed, and today we welcome, America welcomes students from abroad, and Yale, of course, has been eager to enhance the numbers of its international students for some time now. And we have had actually a large growth in overall international student population over the last 10 or 15 years.
I know, Professor, I travel a lot to the Middle East, and obviously a lot of people in the Middle East do prize American education, especially institutions like Yale. Did the profile change over these years? Did you find, for example, again, you said visas were an issue, but was there a decline, for example, in Arab students or people from the Middle East in general?
Our numbers in the Middle East were slightly affected by events of 2001, but they've been pretty, but not much, and they've been pretty steady sense. We don't. I must say we don't have huge representation from the Middle East, and we'd like to see more. My sense in traveling there is that there are many families in the Arab world that worry about sending their students to the United States. They're concerned that they might be treated with prejudicially, that they won't be well accepted. But actually, I think you could find from talking to Arab students at places like Yale and our peer institutions that that's really not the case. I mean, the students are welcomed here. We have a very good community. We give a lot of support, actually, to students, observant Muslims. We have a associate chaplain of the university who's a Muslim, and we have tried to be culturally very sensitive to the needs of students from all parts of the world. And if I had one message for your audience in the Middle East, I would say Yale would welcome your best and brightest.
Well, sir, I know as you were talking, we put up some of the figures of where most of your students come in from. In the first three places, for example, China, Korea, and India, and then Saudi Arabia came fourth there. China, of course, is a particular place of interest to you. You're there a lot talking to our Chinese educators. Right. How do you compare the education systems in the two countries?
Well, the Chinese system is undergoing tremendous reform right now. They've vastly increased the number of students getting access to higher education. They went from 5% to 15% of the eligible age cohort just within 1 decade. That's really a dramatic change. And they also are making big investments at the top end of their system. The very best universities are being bet upon as having a shot at getting world-class status as research institutions. So they're putting a lot of money into new science buildings, into research, and they're also looking at changing their curriculum to conform more to the American model, both abandoning the specialized curriculum that is common in Europe and was prevailing in China during the communist period up till recently, where students as undergraduates studied only one subject. Today, many of the elite universities in China are opening that up and having the American system of a year or two of general education, followed by specialization in the last couple of years. They, I think, believe, as we do in the United States, that that system, which emphasizes both breadth and general problem-solving skills, as well as getting some depth in one field, is actually preferable to being a narrow specialist, because the world changes so quickly, technology changes so quickly, job requirements change so quickly in today's world, that it's good to have some breadth and flexibility and be able to see the world from a number of different perspectives.
What about learning styles, Professor? Because certainly as I went through university and my early education, it was a lot of cases of simply learning to remember stuff and less problem solving and less application of information. But I know in America that's very different.
Yeah, in America, and I would say probably in Britain as well, there's much more focus on not so much on mastery of content, but on the ability to frame an argument and sort of to really understand material critically, to develop the skills of thinking through a problem from both sides, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of an argument, not just memorizing facts. And I think that leads to people to be more creative thinkers and better leaders. So we have focused on that. The Chinese traditionally have had a much more passive system of rote recitation, one learning the received wisdom in a field, and being much more passive about it. The Chinese leadership sees that could be a fundamental weakness in the Chinese system, and particularly at the top end, at the very best universities, they are encouraging more flexible interaction with faculty, trying to encourage students to be more skeptical, more questioning, more open to thinking about things from multiple perspectives. I think that's likely to be a big payoff for the Chinese. I think it does have potential political implications. That is, if you start to teach people to think more independently, it's likely to make it more difficult to sustain a kind of one-party rule in a country.
We have a caller on the line, Professor, from Morocco. Good to hear from Morocco. Al-Mahdi, your question, please.
Hello.
Go on.
My name is Mehdi. I'm actually calling from the African Leadership Academy. I'm a representative. And we're recruiting Moroccan students to attend the ALA in Morocco. And we're currently planning on having A-level programming at our academy in South Africa. And what I'd like to know from you is, how do you compare A-level programming as opposed to international baccalaureate level? Just wanted to know your opinion.
Okay. A-levels being advanced levels.
Yes, no, I know that. I don't think we have a strong view of that. We get excellent students who come to us from both systems. So I think you really need to look at it yourself and decide which of the systems makes the most sense for you. And of course, they're talking about reform of the A-levels in Britain anyway now. So the two systems might get closer together in the future.
Oh, I went through A-levels, believe me, and a lot of grey hairs start with A-levels. Now, Professor, what about online learning? Where does this fit into the whole structure of how education has changed, particularly in America?
So online learning is very interesting because it does offer some tremendous opportunities to reach audiences that didn't have access to good education. It's certainly helpful to all kinds of people at middle stages of their careers. They can't afford to leave their jobs, but they want to get advanced course credits and move up professionally. It's had a very good market. I mean, online MBAs and online professional certification has become a big industry in the United States, and I think that's a very good thing. It has not, at this point, really replaced the sort of core undergraduate educational experience, and I think it's unlikely to. I mean, if I were to say 20 years out, do I think a number of people would, a significant number will get bachelor's degrees online? Yeah, I think they probably will, but I don't think it will displace the quality experience that one gets from 4 years in a residential setting, living with people of your own generation and interacting personally on a daily basis with faculty. So I don't think it's really a threat to the top institutions. I think, in fact, it could be a very useful complement for institutions like ours where we can make our resources more available to a wider public. I mean, Yale only educates 11,000 students at a time. But we're now putting some of our best courses online for free use by people all around the world. We'll be launching just next week a series of courses that will be available for anyone to watch over the internet, to take advantage of, and to read all the supplemental materials, and in effect pick up for themselves the equivalent experience that one would have sitting in a classroom in New Haven.
A brief thought, considering how new online education is, would someone who has an online MBA, in your eyes, still be rated as highly as someone who's gone through the actual physical process of going to an educational institution?
I don't think any of the online MBA programs have quite yet come up to that level, but there are some that are really quite respectable. And some good universities have been doing sort of a hybrid of online and on-site education. Like Duke, for example, their business school runs a program that is mostly online, but then the students all come together for a culminating experience for the last several weeks. I think we'll see a lot of exploration in this space, and I'm sure we'll see some quality offerings.
Now, Professor, I was interested to read, you are very much a pioneer and an advocate for improving the environmental friendliness of universities, and have been very keen to push more responsible production of greenhouse gases, for example. Tell me a little bit about your program there and the progress you've made with that.
It's actually been dramatic. We committed 2 years ago to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions to 10% below our 1990 levels. Which meant reducing it by 43% from where we were in 2005. We've already reduced it by 17% in just 2 years. And we've done this through a combination of measures that involve improvements in the efficiency of our power plants, and changing windows, changing heating and lighting controls, running vehicles on biofuels, a whole mix of different strategies. And we're quite confident we can make it to our goal. We also think it's important for universities to do this, and I've been encouraging universities both in the US and around the world to demonstrate to the public at large that large institutions can actually make commitments of substantial magnitude in getting greenhouse gases down, and they can do it at very modest cost. I think a lot of the worry about carbon reduction on a planetary basis is that it's going to be very expensive and it will sacrifice our standard of living. But I really think that the costs are modest. We believe we can get a reduction that would be commensurate with what the world needs to do to stop global warming for something like 1/2% of our operating budget. And if you ask the question, would you pay a 1/2% tax to save the planet? I think most people would answer yes.
Professor, what about the way the university obviously is such a strong force in a town like New Haven? How's the relationship with the community, the local community, developed? How do you integrate the massive student body you have there, and the influential student body of international students, with the local community?
Well, I think we've made great progress on that front. New Haven is an old industrial town where a lot of the industry had left, and was a rather poor city with a somewhat troubled, economic core. And over the last 15 years, we have worked very closely with the city to rebuild the downtown, to revitalize the retail business sector, to really make New Haven a very strong and vital place. It's working very well. We're very involved. Our students are very engaged in teaching, in tutoring in the schools, and helping out with education of young people. It's a very vital and dynamic partnership. And New Haven today is a very attractive town, a city of about 120,000, and has cultural resources that I would say exceed those of any city of that size in North America, right, with all of our art museums and musical performances and theaters that New Haven is really quite an exciting place to live.
Well, we've come around in the final minute. We've come around back to where we started almost, with an email that just came in from Horst Klaus in Canada. And Horst says American university students should definitely be better informed about the rest of the world. Geography seems to be a totally neglected subject in the US and even Canadian schools in general. A quick comment on that, sir, before we wrap up.
I want to send our students all over the world so they'll really understand the map. They'll know geography by the time they get through here.
Well, sir, I wish you luck. Thank you very much for joining us and discussing this subject. We'll, of course, touch on any developments you have, and good luck with your environmental program.
Thank you so much.
All right. Professor Richard Levin there joining us from Yale University in New Haven in Connecticut. And thank you for being with us. Don't forget, if you have any pressing thoughts about issues around the world you'd like us to cover, or comment on the shows that you see here, you can send emails to riz@aljazeera.net. And of course, you can always join us live for the shows when we are broadcasting live, and we hope you will join us for that. We'll see you next time. Don't forget, Street Talk is coming up next.